The X-Men 97 finale was amazing, but it also reveals a bunch of crazy stuff that all the people on the internet are trying to decipher as we speak. So I want to go over all the reveals in this finale, and using the power of being a gigantic freaking lifelong nerd, I'm going to go over 5 massive reveals in the finale, stuff that a lot of people are missing, stuff that's going to shock you. And I believe all of it is setting up stuff that will be explored in season 2. Okay, first up, let's talk about Onslaught! Now, a lot of you probably already know who Onslaught is. Essentially, Onslaught is the dark side of Professor Xavier's personality mixed with the power of Magneto. And technically, when Magneto ripped all the adamantium out of Wolverine's body, it teased Onslaught, because that happened in the Fatal Attraction run. What happened after that was Charles Xavier going crazy. Charles then blasted his good friend Magneto, no did he, with a massive psychic attack which would see aspects of their personality be torn apart and mixed together, and eventually that would become Onslaught. Now, Onslaught didn't appear in comics until about 2 years after the Fatal Attractions thing with Wolverine's adamantium being sucked out of his body. I don't feel comfortable saying no did he after every single one of these. However, the finale really pushes this to a whole new level, as you have Charles and Eric inside Eric's mind trying to find their way back to consciousness. We can actually see the darkness of that broken mind all around them in those choppy waters. And the fact that Professor X is able to motivate that segment of Magneto's mind to remember who he is and burst back into his body is likely the same thing that actually allowed Onslaught to escape as well. And I mean, you even have Magneto commenting on the darkness inside of him, how nobody can relate to it. And you have Charles saying that same darkness is in me. It's in a lot of people. I can relate to it. That is a super on the nose tease that the dark aspects of their personalities are in there together and mixing up to be a big old batch of Onslaught cookies. And again, I think this will be explored in season 2. There's obviously a lot of Apocalypse stuff that's going to be happening in season 2, but Apocalypse did actually side with the mutants and a lot of the Marvel heroes in fighting against Onslaught, because Onslaught is that guy. He killed a lot of Marvel characters in Marvel Comics, a damn near unbeatable being. The number 2 reveal in the finale of X-Men 97 has to do with Rama-Tut. In the scenes where we encounter a young Apocalypse who is at that time in Saba Nur, you can actually see this golden dome in the background shots. That is indeed where Rama-Tut is ruling from at this time in the Marvel timeline. Now, in Marvel Comics, Rama-Tut is Kang, and it's a version of Kang that goes back in time actually to this exact moment to try to find Apocalypse and raise Apocalypse as his own. Kang, being from the future, understands how powerful Apocalypse will become, and so one of the things he tries to do is go back to Egypt and basically recruit him and make him his lead servant, because Kang thinks if he can get Apocalypse to work for him, he'll be the strongest Kang that there is. So it seems like this is setting up some kind of a conflict between Apocalypse and the X-Men and Rama-Tut. Now, in comics, it was actually the Fantastic Four that goes back in time. They kick Kang's butt, force him back into the timeline, and then they leave, and then Apocalypse finds Kang's ship, which allows him to become even more powerful. I'm going to go into this in a whole other video, but it kind of seems like what we are seeing in the finale is basically the beginning and the end and the present day of Apocalypse. And it is possible that Apocalypse is basically using the X-Men to recreate Apocalypse in this timeline. It gets a little timey-wimey, but Apocalypse was technically defeated at the Nexus of Time with all of these psychics at the Nexus of Time working together to basically eliminate him from existence. And yet we see in season 5 of the original X-Men show that Apocalypse exists in some kind of void as a consciousness, and he's even able to return into a host body, but we never have anything else resolved. And so in my mind, I kind of think Apocalypse goes from not existing, but kind of existing from the void to existing properly in the universe, but his body is limited and his powers are probably limited as well. And so maybe he's using some kind of power to send the X-Men back in time and also into the future to actually create his proper origin again, allowing him to maintain the level of power that he once had. And on that note, it kind of takes us to the next big reveal. The number 3 reveal has to do with Rachel Summers, aka Mother Ascani. Now, Rachel Summers is the daughter of Jean Grey and Cyclops in the timeline from Days of Future Past. She's incredibly powerful, just like her mother. She ends up becoming a host for the Phoenix Force, goes through all sorts of crazy timey-wimey nonsense, and eventually ends up stranded at the end of time, fighting in the actual Age of Apocalypse timeline against Apocalypse. And so what I think you're actually seeing with that segment of the finale is the result of what is happening due to Apocalypse's body being restored, his origin being recreated in the timeline with the potential help of the X-Men. So that timeline is an Age of Apocalypse, which has now been created because of resetting Apocalypse's origin, creating a scenario where he actually wins. Rachel Summers is a really interesting character, and in comics, she only ever interacts with her parents in other bodies. Their minds go to the future where she is at. And so this is a wild change with her actually interacting with her parents from a different timeline technically, but her actual parents in the flesh in the future. This could connect to Bishop, who originally takes Nathan into the future to fix him, creating Cable, who then comes back into time. But there's this weird thing where like Cable's origin in X-Men 97 is technically different than it is in the comic books. And there's a question as to how that happened and affected all of the different timelines. And also, is this the Bishop that was at the Nexus in time and perhaps just trying to stay a step ahead of the new version of Apocalypse and his plan to recreate himself? And that takes us to the 4th major reveal, and this happens in the post-credit scene of this episode, and this seems to be teasing Apocalypse resurrecting Gambit and making him the Horseman of Death, which is something that happens in Marvel Comics. And we see Apocalypse on Genosha in the present day, meaning that his body has been restored, likely his power has been restored. Perhaps this is also the effect of causes that we are now going to see taking place in that future timeline with Rachel Summers and in that past timeline with the X-Men and Insaba Nur. Either way, you got freaking Apocalypse in the present day, powerful once again. And this might even be an Apocalypse that has spent 12 lifetimes in the Nexus of Time, that was in the void and recreated or possessed a body to then start all of these chain events again. Basically, this could even be a more powerful version of Apocalypse that we have seen before in the show and in comics. And we're also pretty sure he's resurrecting Gambit to make him the Horseman of Death. I mean, again, that happens in comics, but he's talking about so much death, Horseman of Death, and he's even holding the Queen of Hearts, which was, of course, the card that Gambit had. It sort of ties into the fact that he sacrificed himself for the person that he loves, Rogue. Now, the last reveal here is a potential real crazy one, and there's nobody really talking about this, and I must say it is speculation for now, but it all has to do with the shot of Peter Parker and Mary Jane from the end of the episode. Now, this is crazy for a number of reasons. Number one, it suggests that Peter Parker did find Mary Jane in the multiverse. Remember that this version of Peter Parker had a lot of experiences with Madam Web and the Beyonder, who in that old show was actually in charge of Madam Web. He even participated in a Secret Wars-like event. And at the end of the 90s animated Spider-Man show, Mary Jane is lost somewhere out in the multiverse. And the last thing we see that Peter Parker doing at the end of the show is going into the multiverse to try to find Mary Jane. And this shot at the end of this finale means that he did indeed find her. And showrunner Bo DeMayo did comment on Twitter saying that this proves that Peter did find Mary Jane in the multiverse. But there's something else I noticed about this shot, which is kind of interesting. You can see the expression on the two characters' faces, and they actually appear to be different. If you look at Mary Jane's expression, she's looking right at the TV screens, her eyebrows are raised, and she seems really shocked. However, Peter Parker does not have his eyebrows raised and seems to be almost looking down. And the impression I get just off of the design of this character and the way they animated him is that he might even know what is going on. And the truth is, we have no idea what Peter actually went out and experienced in the multiverse, But there are a lot of rumors that Marvel Studios or Marvel Animation wants to revitalize that old Spider-Man show and do a Spider-Man 98. Some scoopers were even teasing that that's become even more likely due to the success of X-Men 97. And considering the timey-wimey potential multiverse-breaking events of this finale of X-Men 97, wouldn't it surprise me at all if this Peter Parker has seen something similar or even knows, due to traversing the multiverse, exactly what is happening right now. And I know that one's kind of a stretch, but I can't help myself, man. I really do feel like there's something way more to this scene, and there's something that will tie Parker's multiversal travels to what Apocalypse is doing as far as traveling throughout time, traveling to the nexus of time, being eliminated but existing in the void, and then coming back. This could all actually be tied together via Immortus or the Beyonder himself, or just Apocalypse, which is all stuff that Peter might know about if he found out about it through his multiversal travels. There you go, guys. 5 major reveals from the finale of X-Men 97. I just want to say thank you to everybody involved in making this show, because it's freaking awesome, but also it has allowed me to do some really fun theory crafting, because although some of this stuff did happen in comics, it's happening in a different order. There are slight changes, and this is its own unique timeline, and so I'm fascinated to see where the story goes in season 2. I've got some more videos to do. I want to really deeply dive into who could possibly have made the asteroid disappear and taken the X-Men throughout time. I have theories on that as well. But anyway, let me know what you think about these crazy 5 reveals, just the show overall. Let me know in the comments section.